A maid's daughter stood in the marble lobby of the Hartwell Tower, clutching the old man's fallen grocery bag while everyone else stepped away from him, as if he carried a curse. The maid's daughter helped an old man everyone avoided, steadying his shaking hands as a pack of wealthy tenants whispered and watched. A bruised apple rolled to her feet worth maybe 70 cents, yet treated like it did not belong in this building. She picked it up anyway. The old man met her eyes with a look that did not match his worn coat, and then someone shouted her name. Sophia Reyes grew up in a narrow apartment above a laundromat in Newark, New Jersey, where the machines hummed through the night and her mother returned home with the soft chemical scent of the condos she cleaned. Most kids her age learned to ride bikes on quiet streets. Sophia learned to fold towels fast enough to help her mother finish her shift before the last bus. She was 16, small in stature but steady in presence, shaped by a life where every dollar mattered and every kindness counted. Her mother, Elena, cleaned the luxury Hartwell Tower 6 days a week. She never complained, never lifted her voice, and carried one rule through every rented hallway and marble lobby: we do our work with dignity. No one can take that from us. Sophia repeated it quietly whenever she felt the weight of being seen, but not allowed to be seen. Hartwell Tower was a world she knew only through side glances. Winter coats, worth more than her family's monthly rent. Polished shoes leaving no trace. People who spoke without ever looking down. She understood her place there, invisible, helpful, and never in the way. Yet she also carried the quiet stubbornness her mother tried to soften. When she witnessed unfairness, it gnawed at her. When someone was left out or pushed aside, she felt it like a spark under her ribs. Sophia never expected her life to brush against theirs. She simply accompanied her mother on days the babysitter canceled, working quietly, grateful for the extra hours. She never imagined that one small act helping someone everyone else avoided would pull her past the clean edges of Hartwell Tower and into a story no one would believe. And it started on the day she noticed the old man who did not belong there. Or so she thought. The opportunity appeared on a cold Saturday morning when Elena received a call from the Hartwell management office. Their weekend concierge had called out, and they needed temporary help in the lobby, someone who could greet deliveries, answer simple questions, and keep the front desk from looking abandoned. It was only for a few hours. It paid more than Elena made in an entire shift, and it required someone trustworthy. Elena hesitated, then looked at Sophia. "You can do this," she said softly. "You're careful, you're respectful, and it will help us with next month's bills." Sophia felt the words settle in her chest like warm light. She had always been the shadow beside her mother's work, never the one given responsibility inside the building. Standing behind the Hartwell desk meant stepping into a place she had only observed from the edges, one lined with polished stone, quiet wealth, and the soft echo of privilege. When they arrived, the building manager handed Sophia a neat binder of tasks. "Stay polite, stay still, and don't interact with residents unless necessary," he instructed, barely glancing up. "And please, don't make this complicated." She nodded, even though the instructions pressed against her like an invisible wall. Still, the job felt like a small doorway opening, a chance to be something more than the girl who waited in the service lounge with a backpack and a packet of crackers, a chance to show her mother she could carry some of the burden. For the first hour, everything felt almost peaceful. Delivery drivers came and went. A few residents passed through with the faint scent of expensive perfume or fresh winter air. Sophia kept her posture straight, her voice steady, her hands folded just as she had been told. Then she saw the old man enter, slow steps, worn coat, and a plastic bag stretched thin from weight. Residents shifted away from him without a word, and Sophia's hope-filled morning took a turn she never expected. The old man's entrance barely made a sound, yet somehow it disrupted the lobby like a gust of cold air. His plastic grocery bag sagged in his hand, thin handles digging into his wrist. Sophia noticed how residents reacted instinctively, bodies turning, eyes narrowing, as if he carried trouble inside his worn coat. He stopped near the front desk, unsure, blinking against the glow of the chandelier. "Excuse me," he murmured, voice gentle. Before he could finish, A young woman in a designer coat stepped away sharply. "Why is he in here?" she demanded, loud enough for others to hear. Her words sliced through the quiet. "This lobby is for residents and guests, not outsiders." Sophia waited for the building manager to intervene, but he only adjusted his tie and pretended to read an email. Delivery workers glanced over but kept moving, unwilling to get involved. The old man's hand trembled, and the grocery bag slipped from his fingers. An apple rolled across the marble floor until it hit the toe of a guest's shoe. The woman grimaced. "Great, now he's making a mess." Something clenched in Sophia. She stepped around the desk and bent to gather the fallen items: bread, apples, a pack of tea. The old man bent down too, but his joints moved stiffly, painfully. Their hands brushed lightly. "Thank you," he whispered. But before Sophia could answer, the building manager snapped. "Miss Reyes, step back from the resident area. You're here to staff the desk, not handle situations." Residents looked on with the kind of interest people reserve for disruption. That does not affect them, but proves something about the world they believe in. A few lifted their phones not to record, just to scroll while pretending they were above it all. Sophia straightened. "He needs help. That is not your responsibility," the manager replied coolly. "If he is lost, security will handle it." The words struck her harder than she expected. Her mother watched from a corner near the service hallway, worry tightening her face, silently pleading for Sophia not to push back. But the damage was already done. Residents whispered, casting looks at Sophia as if she had broken some unspoken rule of separation, as if her simple act of kindness had overstepped a boundary. And then, from the far end of the lobby, a calm male voice cut through the tension. "What exactly is happening here?" Everyone turned. The heir to Hartwell Tower had entered, and he had seen everything. Ethan Hartwell had grown up in that same marble lobby, but he had never seen it like this: charged, uncomfortable, weighted with silent judgment. He had returned from a morning meeting downtown, expecting the usual polished predictability of the building his family owned. Instead, he stepped into a moment that froze the room. A cluster of residents lingered near the elevators. A temporary desk attendant, he recognized her vaguely, as the maid's daughter stood stiffly beside an elderly man who looked out of place, yet strangely composed. And the building manager was doing what he did best, pretending that the problem was not his to solve. Ethan's father had drilled into him the importance of reading a room, and the room told a story no one wanted to say aloud. People had chosen sides, and the girl had chosen the wrong one. His gaze landed on the old man. The coat, the worn shoes, the gentle confusion in his eyes. Ethan's first instinct was curiosity, then annoyance. Why had the staff let something escalate in the middle of the morning rush? "What exactly is happening here?" he repeated, stepping forward. The residents straightened, some instantly adopting practiced smiles. The manager hurried over. "Mr. Hartwell, no need to worry. Just a minor disturbance. Everything is under control." But Ethan had already caught the tremor in Sophia's shoulders, the quiet humiliation in her posture, the old man clutching his grocery bag like a shield. "By under control," Ethan said evenly. "You mean ignoring someone who needed help?" A few residents shifted uncomfortably at that. The woman in the designer coat looked away. The manager forced a laugh. "Of course not. We simply needed to ensure." "Ensure what?" Ethan asked. "That no one offered kindness?" His tone wasn't harsh, just matter of fact, but it carried through the lobby in a way that made several people pause their impatience. Ethan turned toward Sophia, her eyes lifted, wary and defensive, as if she expected him to blame her next. He noticed the apple she still held carefully, and something about that small gesture protecting what everyone else dismissed struck him. Then he looked at the old man again. There was something in those eyes: sharpness behind the fragility, awareness behind the uncertainty. A flicker he almost recognized, though he could not place it. "Sir," Ethan said quietly, "how can we assist you?" The old man opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, the elevator dinged and everything in that moment began to shift. The elevator doors slid open, revealing 3 more residents stepping out, mid-conversation, unaware of the tension until they saw the cluster in the lobby. Their chatter died instantly. Eyes cut toward the old man, then toward Sophia, then toward Ethan, waiting to see what he would do. Hartwell Tower had its own hierarchy, and its residents watched Ethan the way people watch a verdict form. The manager leaned in, voice lowered but urgent. "Mr. Hartwell, allow security to remove him discreetly. It's better for the building." The old man flinched at the word remove. Sophia heard it too, and something inside her tightened. Ethan didn't look at the manager. He stepped forward instead, placing himself directly between the old man and the semicircle of residents gathering, their discomfort now a visible force in the room. "No one is removing anyone," Ethan said. His tone was calm but firm, a tone he rarely used unless he meant to shut down an argument completely. "This man is a guest in our lobby, and he will be treated with basic respect." A ripple moved across the room. Some residents exchanged looks, irritation from a few, surprise from others. The designer coat woman muttered, "This is ridiculous," but she didn't dare push further. Ethan turned to Sophia. "You were helping him. Continue." Those simple words hit harder than any shout. For the first time since the incident began, Sophia felt the air shift just slightly back toward decency. She bent to gather the remaining groceries, handing the old man his items gently. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked him. He nodded once, but his eyes stayed fixed on Ethan with a strange, assessing expression, as though he was studying him rather than seeking protection. The manager tried again. "Mr. Hartwell, perhaps we should move this to a private area." "No," Ethan said. "It stays here. Everyone should see how we treat people." The lobby fell silent, and in that silence, something bigger than a simple misunderstanding began to unfold, something none of them fully recognized yet. The moment Ethan finished speaking, a deep, authoritative voice cut through the lobby. Ethan, his father, Charles Hartwell, strode out from the executive elevator, a floor reserved only for ownership and top management. He carried presence the way others carried designer coats, effortlessly, and with expectations attached. Conversations in the lobby halted as naturally as breath. Charles's gaze swept the gathering, taking in the old man, Sophia, the residents, and finally Ethan. "Why has the lobby turned into a spectacle?" he asked, each word measured, each syllable a warning. Ethan squared his shoulders. "Because people stood by instead of helping someone who clearly needed it." Charles didn't bother to hide his displeasure. "This building isn't a community shelter. Our residents expect order, not scenes." Ethan felt the familiar push of his father's authoritative, polished logic wrapped in quiet pressure. "Order doesn't mean turning our backs on people," he replied. "This man did nothing wrong." Charles stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not his dominance. "We have rules for a reason. Staff follow them. Residents trust them. If someone creates discomfort, it is our responsibility to remove the disruption quickly and quietly." Sophia felt the words settle heavily in the space between father and son. Elena, still standing near the service hallway, went rigid. She knew too well how easily policies could silence people like them. Ethan held his father's gaze. "Maybe our policies are the problem." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Residents shifted, sensing a line being crossed. Charles's jaw tightened. "You are not running this building. I am. And you will not undermine me in front of residents and staff." Ethan's reply came steadily, without heat. "I'm not undermining you. I'm standing for what's right." Charles glanced at Sophia then, just long enough for her to feel the weight of being categorized worker, lower class, someone whose presence shouldn't complicate their image. "Escort the gentleman out," Charles ordered the manager, "and return the lobby to normal." But before anyone moved, the old man lifted his head, and the room braced as if something long hidden was about to rise to the surface. The lobby didn't breathe. Everyone stood suspended between Charles's order and the old man's quiet defiance. His hand, thin but steady, rose just enough to stop the manager from approaching. "I can walk out on my own," the old man said softly. "But I would like to finish speaking first." Charles frowned, unused to anyone challenging the flow of his decisions. Residents exchanged uneasy glances. This was no longer the simple interruption they had labeled it as minutes earlier. The old man turned to Sophia. "Thank you for picking up my things," he said. "You treated me like a person." His tone wasn't dramatic, just honest. And that honesty felt heavier than the crowd's disapproval. Sophia swallowed hard. "I just didn't want you to be alone in it." He nodded, then looked at Ethan, studying him with that same sharpness Ethan had noticed earlier. "And you stepped in when the room wanted you silent." Ethan felt something shift inside him, an unfamiliar sense of being evaluated not as a Hartwell, but as himself. Charles exhaled sharply. "Sir, whatever your concern is, this is not the appropriate. I know exactly where I am." The old man interrupted, his voice still calm. "Hartwell Tower, a place that prides itself on elegance." His gaze lingered on the residents, who had recoiled from him. "But elegance without compassion is just polished stone." A few murmurs rose, quickly stifled. Charles's jaw tensed. "This is unnecessary, maybe," the old man replied, "but necessary for me." Then, without warning, he turned away from the father and addressed the one person who had crossed an invisible barrier for him. "Sophia, I don't want to cause trouble for you," he said gently. "I know what it costs to stand up when you're expected to stay quiet." Sophia felt her throat tighten. "You didn't cause trouble." "People did." Ethan watched the exchange, then stepped closer. "Let me at least walk you out. Not as security, not as protocol, just properly." The old man gave a faint smile, as though amused by the formality. "I would appreciate that." As the two of them moved toward the doors, Sophia hesitated. Something in her chest felt unfinished, pulled taut by what had happened and what hadn't been said. Ethan stopped and looked back at her. "You coming?" The question surprised her, soft, genuine, as though inviting her into something beyond the roles everyone else insisted she stay in. She nodded and followed. But when they stepped outside into the cold air, a different tension settled between them. Not anger, something more complicated. Ethan faced her once they reached the plaza. "You didn't have to help him. Most people wouldn't." Sophia met his eyes. "That's exactly why I had to." The old man listened quietly, a small knowing curve at the corner of his mouth. "People reveal themselves when no one is watching," he said. "And when everyone is." Sophia wondered what he meant by that. Ethan wondered why the words sounded like they carried more history than he could grasp. Before either could ask, the old man nodded toward the street. "I'll be all right from here." But he didn't walk away immediately. He stood there, as if deciding something. Then, with a soft tilt of his head, he said, "We'll meet again," and he disappeared into the city, leaving Ethan and Sophia standing in the cold, two strangers suddenly bound by a moment neither fully understood. The following Monday, the building manager summoned Sophia and her mother to the office. Elena braced for reprimand or dismissal, but instead, he announced a sudden policy shift. Hartwell Tower wanted to enhance community engagement and required all temporary staff to assist with a new resident outreach audit. It sounded official, but Sophia understood immediately this was Charles Hartwell's way of watching her more closely. The twist came when the manager added, "You'll be paired with Mr. Ethan Hartwell for the audit." He requested it. Elena's eyes widened. Sophia's pulse kicked. She wasn't sure if it was a punishment, a test, or something in between. Later that afternoon, Ethan met her in the service lounge, an area he had probably never stepped into before. He looked oddly out of place among the metal shelves and detergent scent. "I didn't ask for you to get in trouble," he began. "I didn't," she replied quickly. "They're just shifting things around." He exhaled, unconvinced. "Then let's make this useful." The audit required them to visit different floors, interview residents, and document concerns, most of which were trivial complaints about heating, package delays, or elevator wait times. But as they moved from floor to floor, something unexpected happened. The invisible gap between their worlds thinned. Ethan noticed how residents spoke to him with rehearsed politeness but looked past Sophia, as though she were part of the decor. Sophia noticed how Ethan softened his tone with elderly tenants and asked questions that actually mattered. She found herself reassessing the air she had assumed lived untouched by struggle. They began exchanging small truths. Sophia about juggling school and work. Ethan about feeling the pressure of inheriting a legacy he never fully chose. By the fourth floor, their rhythm felt natural and likely, but steady, or still. Beneath their growing understanding lingered one unanswered question neither dared voice. Why had the old man seemed to know more than he let on? That question was about to break open their partnership in a way neither expected. Asterisk. The breakthrough came on the 12th floor, an area rarely visited except by long-term residents who preferred privacy. Sophia and Ethan were reviewing maintenance notes outside an apartment when a door down the hall cracked open. A housekeeper stepped out, pushing a cart stocked with lemon polish and folded towels. When she recognized Sophia, she offered a warm smile. "You were kind to Mr. Hale the other day," the woman said softly. Sophia blinked. "Mr. Hale?" The housekeeper nodded. "Yes, the gentleman with the groceries. He used to live here years ago. Before," she hesitated, "before the Hartwell family bought out his company." Ethan straightened. "His company?" The housekeeper lowered her voice. "Hartwell Logistics was originally Hale Freight. Same empire, different name. People forget that." Sophia looked at Ethan, watching realization flicker across his features. "He built the company?" she asked. "No," Ethan said slowly, piecing it together. "My father built it after acquiring Hale's. But if Mr. Hale was the founder..." His voice trailed off, edged with uncertainty. The housekeeper added, "He was pushed out quietly. Some say the takeover left him with almost nothing. He disappeared after that." The hallway seemed to tighten around them. The old man wasn't just a stranger. He was the invisible engine, the forgotten architect beneath the gleaming tower. And Ethan, born into the gilded cage built from that acquisition, now stood face to face with the consequences of his inheritance. Sophia felt the weight of it too. So when people avoided him in the lobby, they avoided a man the building owes its existence to. Ethan finished quietly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan said something unexpected. "We need to find him." Sophia nodded. Together, the partnership that had felt circumstantial now pulsed with purpose. The truth wasn't just surprising, it was explosive. And it was about to force its way into the public eye. Asterisk. They found Mr. Hale 2 days later, sitting on a bench across from Hartwell Tower, watching the building the way someone watches a house they once lived in, but can no longer enter. He greeted them with a calm nod, as though he had expected them. "I wondered when you two would come," he said. Ethan swallowed. "Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" Mr. Hale smiled faintly. "I wanted to see if the tower built on my work had room left for ordinary decency." Sophia felt a pinch in her chest at the truth of that test. How most had failed it. Ethan drew a breath. "Will you come inside with us? My father needs to hear this. The residents should know." Mr. Hale hesitated, then rose slowly. "If you walk beside me." "I will." When the lobby doors opened, conversation stalled. Residents turned. Charles Hartwell stood with the manager, mid-meeting. His expression darkened instantly. "What is this?" Charles demanded. Ethan didn't retreat. "This is Mr. Hale, founder of the company that built this entire tower's fortune." A wave of surprise rippled through the room. Mr. Hale stood quietly, his worn coat a stark contrast to the polished marble. Charles's voice tightened. "That chapter is closed. This man has no business here." "On the contrary," Ethan replied. "He has more business here than any of us." Murmurs rose. Residents leaned closer. The manager froze. Sophia stepped forward, hands steady. He was treated like a problem, when he deserved respect. Mr. Hale lifted his chin. "I didn't come to reclaim anything, only to see what the Hartwell name had become." Ethan faced the room, not his father, not the residents, but the truth. If the tower we run cannot honor the person who built its beginning, then it stands on nothing. The silence that followed felt like a verdict, and this time, no one dared to look away. Asterisk. A week later, the lobby of Hartwell Tower looked unchanged. Same marble shine, same quiet hum, but something had shifted. Near the front desk, resting inside a simple glass case, sat an object no one would have expected to be honored. A single apple. The same kind that had rolled across the floor when everyone stepped away from Mr. Hale. Now it carried a small plaque. "Respect begins with what we choose not to ignore." Mr. Hale had declined any formal restitution, requesting only one thing: an open-door pass, allowing him to visit the tower whenever he wished. Charles Hartwell, after several long meetings and one pointed conversation with his son, signed the approval himself. On the morning the plaque was installed, Sophia stood beside the desk again, not as a temporary worker, but as part-time lobby support with full employee status. Ethan stopped beside her, hands in his pockets, giving a quiet nod that held more sincerity than any grand speech. Hale approached last. He tapped the glass case lightly. "Funny how something so small can reveal something so large," he said. Sophia smiled. "Sometimes the smallest things show who we are." He nodded, satisfied. "And sometimes they show who we can become." Hartwell Tower felt different that day, not richer, not grander, just more human. And the apple, once dismissed and nearly crushed underfoot, now stood as a reminder that dignity has no price tag and that kindness can rewrite the story of even the tallest towers. Sometimes the moments we overlook, the small gestures, the quiet choices are the ones that reveal us most clearly. Sophia did not lift that grocery bag to change a life or expose a truth. She did it because she believed every person deserved dignity, even in a place built on wealth and distance. And in doing so, she uncovered a story buried beneath polished floors and familiar names. If you're still here, maybe something in this journey stirred you, a reminder of how much power simple decency holds. If this story made you feel something, consider sharing it with someone who could use a little hope today. And remember, sometimes the smallest kindness becomes the turning point no one saw coming.